Yeah. Darn it.
Is that doable or is that?
Sure. No, I just need to make sure.
Let me get her name. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. I'm ready. Are you ready? Okay. Yep. No. We just sync. Nope.
We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world
Let's get the lyrics for this.
So is life. Ah, so is life. Whoa, so is life. Ah, so is life. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. Whoa, so is life. Whoa, so is life. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Whoa, so is life. Ah, so is life. Whoa, so is life. Ah, so is life.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane. It is a joy to be here with you. We are a welcoming congregation, and we appreciate your unique background, your coughs, your beliefs, your lifestyles, your quirky habits, your dietary preferences, everything else that makes you you. We're delighted to have the old-timers, the newcomers, the latecomers, the babies learning to use their lungs. And a special welcome to those of you streaming with us or watching us in the future online. I want to draw your attention to some announcements. First, there are some great new opportunities to build intergenerational community here at the church. We are shifting the story for all ages during worship. So Aria is offering a new storytelling workshop for people who want to learn new methods of storytelling. That is Monday evening, January 14th at 6 p.m. We're also launching a coming of age program for 12 and 13-year-olds. If you are roughly that age, or interested in hanging out with people that age, stick around after the second service on January 20th. And second, you may know that I have a weekly tea time on Mondays at 5 p.m. Unfortunately, I won't be there tomorrow, but I will be there the following week, and then I'm traveling for school the week after that. So please take a look at the church calendar if you'd like to come, and it's really a great opportunity to get to know each other. So come and have tea and cookies with me. Now please turn to your neighbors and say good morning, and try to greet somebody new. We now close our informal greeting of one another and open worship formally with lighting the chalice. This symbol of Unitarian Universalism represents our unity and solidarity, our openness and inclusion, and our community and individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need. And may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it has been found.
I'd like you to think about dawn for a moment. Imagine that first faint lightning on the eastern horizon, so dim and gradual that at first you're not really sure it's there. Now watch that thin sliver grow, so imperceptibly slowly, into a band only a little lighter than the sky around it and the earth below. Maybe some high clouds pick up the first blush of the sun. Gradually, light reflected from the sky makes things more perceptible around us, even though the sun is still below the horizon and there are no shadows. We can't make out colors yet, and the world is still various shades of gray. If there are mountains or even tall trees around us, we might be able to watch as the orange wash of the sunlight descends toward us until the first edge of that bright disk peers over the horizon and we feel its rays. Things seem to move quickly now, even though the spin of the earth hasn't changed, and orange turns to gold and to yellow. Shadows suddenly appear and stretch across the lawn as if they'd been sleeping there all night and are now ready to get up and chase their owners around. The sun climbs, the air warms, the sky brightens, and we turn and go inside. At what point did it become day? When did it stop being night? And did those two things happen at the same time? Humans are very fond of categories, discrete boundaries, and definite edges. Our brains put things into categories as a way of making sense of the world, but most of our world isn't finite and categorical. It's infinite and continuous, and any boundaries we put on it will be artificial. The universe doesn't change any more between December 31st and January 1st than it does between any two other days of the calendar, despite our fireworks and party hats. That doesn't mean that the categories aren't useful. The concepts of day and night still have meaning, and when we're in the middle of either one, we can be quite confident of where we are and what the experience is like. But the edges get fuzzy, and when we're in one of those edges, it can be disorienting and confusing. The same is true with stages in our lives. When did you stop being a child? When did you become an adult? Did those two things happen at the same time? When we're in the middle of one of those stages, we're reasonably comfortable with where we are. But the edges are fuzzy, and moving from one stage to another can be disorienting and confusing. Think adolescence, or retirement, job changes, relationship changes. We've all seen enough dawns and dusks that we know what's coming. Both night and day are familiar to us, and we can enjoy the beauty and uniqueness in each of the transitions between them. But every stage of life is new. Each step from one to the next is a sliding into the unknown. As the poet Wendell Berry put it, there is no science for this, or art either. Even the old body is new. Who has known it before? And no sooner new than gone, to be replaced by a body yet older and again new. In those fuzzy edges, those times when there's light but no shadows or colors, it can be useful to have a companion, someone who's been through and knows what the experience is like. Those of us on the other side have something to offer to those coming through, not a map or turn-by-turn directions, because they are not who we were, and they are traversing different country. But we can offer is a connection, a reassurance that there is another side and it's possible to get there. I imagine myself standing on one side of a stream that's crossing a trail. My companion is on the other, looking for the way across. I can't make the trip for her, can't place her feet where I placed mine, but I can offer my hand as support and tell her which rocks I found slippery and which were stable. And I can say, yes, it was scary for me too. Today's service is about transitions, about the challenge of moving into new phases and experiences, and about how we can help those who are making the trip. So I encourage you to think about your own metaphor for guidance, for support, for encouragement. What can you offer? And what would be helpful to you?
Here we bring new water from the well so clear, for to worship God with this happy new year. Sing levy-do, the water and the wine, the seven bright gold wires, and the bugles that do shine. Sing, rain.
Okay. Okay, I hope I'm live. Am I live? I want to invite all the kids to come up, kids of all ages. Feel free, if you're a grown-up who still wants to be a kid like me. I know there are more of you. Come on up. Great. I love the sun. It feels so good. Yay. Thank you. I know it's very bright. Okay. Hi, I'm Sarah. And the story I'm going to tell you today, you can come up back there, some shy people, is a coyote story. And I know some of the coyote stories because I traveled doing Sacagawea, who traveled with Lewis and Clark. And I've been a lot of times in Idaho, which is a beautiful state, and where the Nez Perce live. And this is a story about how the tribes got their land and, in some cases, their name. So, if it weren't for Coyote's cleverness, all the people and the animals would still be in the monster's belly. Because a long time ago, Coyote was down at Celilo Falls, which doesn't exist anymore because the dams are there, on the Columbia River, and he was building a fish ladder for the salmon to go up. And suddenly, a meadowlark chattered at him. "Well, why are you doing that? All the people and the animals are gone. The monster has eaten them." "Oh," said Coyote, "well, I better check this out." So as Coyote went upstream on the Salmon River, he could see there were no more people. The meadowlark was correct. So he made a plan. Well, if I can make myself tasty to the monster and get inside, maybe I could rescue these animals and get rid of the beast. So Coyote went and he hid himself in the grass. And he said, "Oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like this monster. He's just huge." So then Coyote gathered everything that he thought he would need. Some tools, some camas bulbs, and service berries. Then he shouted at the big body, "Oh, monster, let us inhale each other." Well, the big monster looked around, but he didn't see him because Coyote had painted his body with clay. He shook the grass back and forth where he was hid, and suddenly the monster saw him. "Well, you swallow me first," said the monster. Coyote tried. He powerfully and mostly drew his breath, but the great monster only swayed and shook. Coyote said, "Well, you know, you've already swallowed all the people and animals that I know, so why don't you swallow me so I won't be lonely anymore?" The monster did not know that Coyote had a pack of 5 flint stone knives and also a flint fire-making set. So the monster inhaled like a mighty wind, and Coyote went inside. But he left the camas bulbs and the berries outside, so when the people got out, they'd have something to eat. As Coyote fell through the mouth and into the huge stomach of the beast, he saw his friends, the animal and the people. But when he came to the heart, he took his tools, he started his fire, and then he began cutting the heart away from the monster. The fire grew and the monster jumped around, and he belched out animals and people. And when the Coyote finally cut out his heart, he jumped out himself, and the monster died. Coyote made sure that all the people and the animals got out first, though. Everyone started carving up the monster and working on the bones. And Coyote began dealing out parts of the body to different parts of the country, toward the sunrise, the sunset, the north and the south. And with each part that he threw, he named a tribe and described what their appearance might be. There were the Flatheads, the Cayuse, the Blackfeet, the Coeur d'Alenes, the Yakimas, and the Spokanes. But then his friend, the fox, came up and said, "Coyote, you've used up the body and you used up all the pieces and thrown them here and there, but you've given yourself nothing for this area." So Coyote took the heart and placed the heart of the monster down by the Clearwater River. And he named these people the Nimipu, the Nez Perce. And the heart of the monster can be found in this beautiful country. That's Kamei Valley down in Idaho. That's the home of the Nez Perce tribe. And thus began the human beings with all the races and religions. So think about us here, because we're the tribe of Unitarian Universalists in this beautiful spot by the Spokane River, in this glorious state of Washington. And it's our own tribe. And it's all due to Coyote. Okay. So now we're going to sing everybody to class, right, after I light our candle here.
We light this second chalice so that as our children and youth go to their chapels, they carry the light of our flame with them. May it illuminate, inspire, and warm you as it does us. We have a change in the order of service. The song that will accompany the offertory is being sung this morning by our own member, Claire Serling-Matlin. So we will now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which sustains this church and its mission to the wider world.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're seekers of faith and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
Thank you so much. Each time we gather as a congregation, there are always those with us in our minds and hearts who we want to wrap in our love and care. We kindle light this morning for Rochelle Gettle, who lost 2 of her cats over the holidays. Their names are Angel and Moon. Let us share a moment in silence, embracing others who are here in our hearts this morning. You are welcome to say their names aloud as you are willing. those named aloud, those remembered in the silence, and all those who are suffering elsewhere this hour, we hold in our community of compassion. I want to open our meditation this morning with a personal reflection. I remember the moment I realized my mother couldn't fix everything. I was curled up on her lap at the front window of the living room, the dark, empty, cold street staring blankly at us through the glass. I was 12. At school, my best friend had made new friends. She didn't want to romp around in the mud anymore or compose new songs for our forthcoming hit album. She kind of dumped me. My mom held me, and I could tell that she understood. And that's all she did. She held me and understood. And it was not enough. It did not make the heartbreak go away. It didn't do anything. I was sad, and in my sadness, I was mad. What was the point of this lap if it didn't heal all the hurt? I felt very alone, but of course, I was not alone. My mom was there holding me. Later in life, I would be alone during times of heartbreak, no mother in cuddle range. But she would still be there in some way. In spirit, on the phone, in the back of my head, in my nervous system. It wouldn't be enough, but it would make all the difference. Today we're thinking about coming of age, that very real but hard to pin down moment of transition. Coming of age is an experience for adolescents, but that includes us all. We're either going through this wonderful, terrible shift into adulthood, or looking forward to it, or we've already experienced it, and we have discovered that the journey continues, whether we like it or not. Because once we come of age, more transitions present themselves, and we cycle through new kinds of adolescence. Over and over again, we realize that things aren't what we thought they were. We don't fit in the same friend groups or routines or clothing that we used to. And we come of age. Then we outgrow that age, and we come of age again. For many among us here in the room and here in the community, celebrations of childhood ring hollow because childhood was not safe. It wasn't a rite of passage. It was a survival strategy. All of us have memories, conscious or visceral, of times when the adults in our lives were not there for us. And not just because they couldn't be. Sometimes they weren't even trying. Injustice touches us personally. Children are definitely not immune. And the early injustices are really the worst. As humanity matures, we are haunted by legacies of trauma and violence that live on in our collective failure to care for the planet and end war. Young people learning of genocide, mass extinction, and our own government's efforts to unsettle democracy here and abroad are rightly enraged. We have inherited a nightmare, the youngest among us the most. As adults, whether as parents or as stewards of this planet and our community, we know we make errors. It is hard to wrap our minds and souls around the worst injustices, but many of us sense that we could be doing more. In our day-to-day lives, we know that we don't always act like adults. Even if we are no longer teenagers, the rage at this raw deal, heartbreak, with no one to fix it, the rage surfaces sometimes and immobilizes us. Or it mobilizes us for unhelpful action. Part of growing up is accepting the terrible correctness of this rage, holding the teenager raging inside, and learning to withstand the accusations of powerlessness. Part of growing up is acknowledging our own powerlessness and calmly finding our power anyway. Imagine that each of us came to church today, accompanied by everyone we once were and everyone we will someday become. This makes it a very crowded sanctuary, standing room only. The person you will be next year, 2 days from now, is milling about in the friendship hall, chatting with the person you were last year. Your toddler self is running down the aisle squealing, and your wise old elder is giggling. Let's take this opportunity to gather some collective wisdom from your many selves. Reflect on these questions. What wisdom does your younger self possess that helped you get to where you are today? What reassurance does your younger self need from you? What reassurance do you need from the person you know you can be? It is customary at the Jewish New Year to seek and offer forgiveness. Let's bring the spirit of that tradition to the end of the Gregorian calendar, starting with ourselves. What mistakes did your younger self make that you are now finally in a position to forgive? Find something small to forgive. What self-forgiveness do you look forward to once you have more perspective? Now, with gratitude to your personal companions for the journey of life, return to your one and only body, the flesh and blood that holds you here, now. And call to mind all the other flesh and blood people that give your life meaning. In silence, let us ask for the forgiveness of the younger people in our lives, for the ways we haven't held them in their vulnerability. Let us celebrate their tender, profound wisdom and bless their leadership, now and in the future. In silence, let us ask for the forgiveness of the older people in our lives, for the ways we haven't respected their wisdom and sacrifice for us. Let us celebrate their uniqueness, their life force, and the way they connect us to our roots. And now, I invite you to join me in a song. The words were written by UU Minister Rob Eller Isaacs for the Jewish New Year, with a single refrain that goes like this. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. Try it with me. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. I will say the words on the screen, and then you are invited to reply in song. After we finish, please sit or stand for a time of meditation. Please rise and body your spirit. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that we have struck out in anger without just cause. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again. For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again. For the selfishness which sets us apart and alone. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again. For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit. For losing sight of our unity. For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness. It was devastating to realize that my mother couldn't fix everything. But it also resolved a lot of confusion. I've always cared deeply about things being fair. And as a child, I just couldn't figure out why they weren't. Why did bad things happen to good people, people like me? I'd already learned that some bad things weren't all that bad, like when we ran out of cheese in the refrigerator. Some things are just unfortunate or inconvenient, not exactly unfair. But then there were some real injustices, like how my dad lived 6 hours away, and he was further distanced by progressive alcoholism and workaholism. Every time he managed a visit would be much too short, but I would walk on sunshine until he got in his car and left. In tears, I would ask my mom, why? Her love was so huge, and it didn't make sense that I could be unhappy inside it. It took a certain level of maturity to understand that even when she was all loving, my mom wasn't all powerful. Soon I would learn that she wasn't all knowing either. This is a basic theological experience of coming of age. No adult is all loving, all knowing, and all powerful. Actually, no one is even one of those things. And yet here we are, persisting in the fertile cracks of our ideal universe. We grow from the awareness of the individual unfairnesses, like not having enough of our parents' time, to be able to face societal injustices, like economic insecurity, racism, anthropogenic climate change. It's not easy, and there's no one right way to do it. But many Unitarian Universalist congregations offer a coming-of-age program for their youth to help them each find their right way. The program was formalized about a decade ago by the UUA, and our acting director of Children and Family Ministries, Aria Curtis, is bringing it to us this spring. The main features are regular gatherings for 12 and 13-year-olds, who each have individual mentors, and exercises to help them each write a personal credo, which they can share with the whole congregation at the end of the program. It offers a bit of structure and a lot of freedom for folks going through the tumultuous transition to adolescence, and an amazing opportunity for adult mentors to nurture and grow alongside them. Although it continues to be a shock to those of us so-called adults, we have all come through murky transitions, and we've lived to tell the tale. We all have something to offer to someone on a similar path, even if it's just a listening ear. And there's nothing like seeing a young person succeed at something you've struggled at. Sometimes younger eyes have insights for us. So participating in coming of age as an adult mentor may help usher you through your next transition. Like I said before, there's an info session after church on January 20th. If too many adults show up, that's fine, because we can start an adult program and mentor each other. Maybe every generation feels this way, but the challenges of coming of age are especially acute right now, with the growing climate catastrophe and our imploding governance structures. 20 plus years ago, my church didn't have a coming of age program, but I was nonetheless steeped in UU values. A few years later, thinking it was probably time for me to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up, I decided to tackle our planet's problems head-on and become a climate economist. It turned out to be way harder than I expected. One day, I went to talk to a professor about my struggle to find a meaningful research question, and I broke down crying. Embarrassed, I said, "My mom says it gets easier after 30. He looked at me and said, "Why would you think that?" Well, I would think that because my mom told me. And I trusted her. And perhaps most importantly, it helped to think that. When I turned 30, things did get better. I don't think that's necessarily a universal experience, but I always like to tell people in their late 20s, people suffering in ways I remember, or simply dreading aging, that it gets better. Because it can get better, and part of what makes that possible is imagining it to be so, and having trustworthy sources of inspiration and encouragement. The basic wisdom we need in order to come of age, here it is, I'm going to tell you, is that there are no easy answers to life's persistent questions, but it's okay to keep going anyway. It's an experiential, embodied wisdom, transmitted by parents and teachers, mentors, ministers, strangers sometimes. A confidence in the journey, rather than a detailed description of the destination. I credit my mom and dad for sharing this wisdom with me, and also the men and women of the Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. There's Keith, who showed up in my life when my mom bought his lawn care services at the church auction. He had pursued a degree in economics and taught college, but had turned his attention to community organizing and keeping the church weeds in check. And there's Arlene, the president of the board when my mom was the treasurer. Arlene taught me to put more butter in everything I cook. Among other key life lessons. They didn't tell me what to believe, but they gave me a safe and dynamic environment for exploring what I wanted to believe. As UU's, their agenda was not to teach me a creed, but to empower me to write my own and to stay supple enough to rewrite it when the time came. A few years ago, I got in touch with someone I'd known in high school named David. He was the church board president when I was the youth representative. I was really struggling in my PhD program, and he had recently retired as an economics professor. I don't remember what he said to me as I shared my heartbreak about my career, but there was wisdom in his listening, a reassurance that I could be both a UU and an economist, or I could set economics aside and still be worthy. In the words of Elizabeth Wilhelm, who grew up in this church, I knew I would be welcome home to my community, no matter the nature of that homecoming. David gave me the thread I needed not only to complete the PhD, but to pivot to a new vocation, returning to my roots. Because of his example, I still consider myself an economist, even though my daily activities look rather different than those of my former classmates. There is amazing potential within our community for more intergenerational connection. As an example, I look to Black Lives UU, or BLUE, an organization with a clear vision and praxis for justice within and beyond Unitarian Universalism. BLUE is led by young people, but it has an elders council to provide knowledge, insight, and guidance. Elders are a crucial connection between BLUE leaders and the spirit of their work to hold and create spaces for Black UUs to thrive. Elders tell stories from their own lives and stories that were told to them, stories that hold the wisdom younger generations need to know in order to carry out their efforts. We all have stories to tell, and we all need to hear your stories. You may be aware that the way we do the story for all ages during worship is changing. Because of copyright restrictions for streaming and recording our services, we can no longer read whole storybooks. This is really disappointing to many of our dedicated storytellers. who love the tradition of sharing books with children and encouraging them to read. I myself have fond memories of sounding out words with my grandma. Perhaps we need to have a core group of story readers to participate in Children's Chapel, where this tradition can continue. But as an all-ages worship leader, I'm excited to hear storytellers' own words. Even if it's written down ahead of time, mine always is, telling a story is different from reading a story. It's an older tradition, one that we still engage in probably hundreds of times every week. I've already done it several times this morning. Storytelling is not always easy, but it's rewarding. And as I've said before, when I tell you a story about the world, you get a glimpse from my eyes, and the us between us changes. Everyone can learn this art, and anyone is welcome to practice with us, even if you're feeling shy about telling a story for the whole congregation. Aria will be hosting a storytelling workshop January 14th, a Monday evening. Now, as you know, there is nothing compulsory about this church, but I want you to suppose that you had to choose which of these two gatherings to go to. Are you more of a storytelling artist with a mythical, poetic bent, curious how to hold space for people of all ages, especially the young ones, during worship? Or would you prefer to sit together with a smaller group, sometimes one-on-one, sharing the pearls of wisdom you've accumulated over the years and collecting a few more? Are you more of a storyteller or a mentor? Please take a minute to turn to someone you didn't come to church with and tell them your answer. Thank you for indulging me. We're going to start to close with a song by Dr. Isai M. Barnwell, who has been a singer in Sweet Honey in the Rock. This song is in your hymnal, and it's also what Claire sang for us earlier. It's in the teal hymnal, if you have one of those near you, number 1051. And the words will be up on the screen.
Please stand in body or spirit. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe.
Our benediction this morning also comes from Dr. Issei M. Barnwell, who wrote the hymn we just sang. Each and every one of us stands atop a lineage that has had as its core mothers and fathers and teachers and dreamers, and shamans and healers and builders and warriors and thinkers and. So in spite of our uniqueness, we come from and share every experience that humankind has ever had. In this way, we are one. Amen. Blessed be. Assalamu alaikum. Shalom.